Francois. She's with us this morning, and it's going to lead into a special conversation this morning, if I could put it in that particular way. And Sylvan, I've always introducing you first. So let me say good morning to Ms. Francois.
Hi, good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good.
Welcome. Now, for the benefit of the listeners, viewers this morning, tell us something about yourself before we proceed.
Okay, myself.
This is the simplest, or the short version.
Yes, simple.
The short version.
I'm Grenadian born. I was born in River-Sally, St. Patrick. I left there and I went to that beautiful River-Sally Government School, which really did great for my education when I entered into secondary school in England. And I grew up in London, really, Shepherd's Bush, where all Grenadians are.
Right.
And I'm always into the Grenadian community, and all my life in England, my research, my studies, my education has been centered on Grenada.
All right.
And I'm here now, and
it's good.
for a while.
How does it feel to be in Grenada, even though you've been here for a while? How does it feel to be back in Grenada?
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
Re-education of the mind, and it's actually a beautiful, stunning place, and I'm a poet also, so it gives me a lot of material to write.
Right, great.
And I do write about everything I touch and see.
We're probably going to hear more about that as we proceed this morning. Mr. McIntyre, good morning, sir.
Good morning to you, GT. How are you?
Doing good. Pretty good.
Okay, great.
Pretty good.
So let me just take the opportunity to say good morning to all our viewers or listeners or followers, and some of our favorite fans out there. Let me say special good morning to my adopted mother and sister, Louise and Pat Book. And one of my special friends always listen to GBN over there in the United Kingdom. That's Tani Wade. Good morning to you, Tani, for listening to us. And for all those of you who follow us and ask questions and so forth, pleasant good morning to you. It's really good to be back.
All right.
I had a fantastic week and a week out. Last Monday, I guess you caught me on the road. I was actually transiting.
It was pretty good anyway.
Yeah, through the airport. I was at the airport actually.
Yeah.
And I had a really wonderful week in Central America.
Wow.
We were attending a meeting there, the Caribbean Disaster Risk Management Specialists and some people from Central America, Latin America actually, and the Caribbean. And we were looking at how we can more support the initiative of disaster risk reduction in the Caribbean, particularly during the hurricane season. We are looking at all the systems coming off, and USAID was examining its strategies and so forth. And there's what you call an annual operating plan that we were reviewing as to how we could better contribute to Grenada. So it really was a wonderful experience down there in Central America.
Oh, great. Next time, carry me with you, man.
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Me too. And I can do the writing.
Yes. It's great to be back.
All right. We want to focus our conversation this morning. It's about Grenada and a particular trend that we've been seeing happening, on the island lately. That has become a little bit, if I could say it in local terms, a bit worrisome. If that's a proper word to put in there. It's just a bit worrisome in terms of we seeing the level of violence that's occurring. Was it just a couple of nights in my own area? There was some violence occurring there, and it was sad to see that happening. Sometimes we wonder why people are not living in love and harmony anymore. And we wonder the reason. And then we get in the trend where a lot of folks have making such decisions about themselves. They decide that they don't want to, no longer wants to live.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Making those decisions, and you wonder why. And a couple of days ago, I was speaking to someone about that, and it was kind of narrative and giving me a narrative about that. And it's sad to know things that individuals go through, and they keep it to themselves for a period of time, and then it comes a time when it festers so much. The only thing it does is just explore.
Yeah.
So so we do have Miss Francois with us this morning, and also with Sylvan, and we're going to see how much we can cover. How much we can cover. It's a wide subject matter. It's a massive wide subject matter, and just an hour may not be enough time to get into the meat of the matter, or we may just brush the surface. But certainly hope that what we say here this morning can make a difference in terms of someone who could be listening to this program, and it certainly could make a big difference for them. All right. So I'm not sure how we want to kick this off this morning.
Before you turn to Miss Francois, I know she's going to give an intellectual breakdown, and she's going to give some real life down to earth situation as to how to deal with some things. But I thought as we are on this, I wanted to not lose this just before I traveled off, we had the unfortunate incidences of suicides happening here in Grenada.
Yes.
And then I had to have spoken about youth violence one time. And this is probably going to be a breaking, stunning piece of information to all our viewers and listeners. And when you look at the incidences of depression and how people react and respond to it, it's really not an easy thing to cope with.
Exactly.
And this is what we want to be able to bring. I mentioned last week that we hear a lot of comments, a lot of sometimes criticisms, but we don't hear a lot of solutions. And so this is what I'm sure we would be recommending, Ms. Francois will be saying this morning. But I just want to say this, that people often, as I walk around, people humble me in terms of the contribution that they think I make towards their own development. And thank you. But I also want to, just say that I am also human. I've had my recent very tragic incidents, and it is not the easiest of things to cope with. And there's sometimes the different things that pass through your mind. Sometimes when you're in your space on your own, there are different things that make you feel that you cannot deal with that situation, that you have to find some way of ending it. And I can say from my very early stage in life as a youth, first time I think people hear this publicly, that I also contemplated suicide one time. I did. And what helped me when I was going through that serious depressing moment is that I remember that I spoke to myself as a younger person, and I said, you will not harm yourself regardless of what happens to you in life. You will always remember that you have a contribution to make, and you will not do anything to yourself. And when I contemplated that situation, I heard that little voice speak within me. You said to yourself, you spoke that positive. I found what was a positive solution and an internal fortitude to deal with that situation, and it helped me through that. So we are going to be speaking about how people can find that coping mechanism and not just the criticism. So I thought, you know what, this is real. It came home to me one time, and I need to show people that even if now I can say that I've had a very successful life and career, even if it's not finished, but it could have ended earlier on, and I could not have been the person I am now to be helping people and being a mentor to a lot of the younger people who are coming up, who look toward me for help and guidance.
That is so real.
So real, for real.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has that ability to speak to themselves and diffuse themselves. I like to say it like that.
And that's an interesting point, because I have that in my
You do. Absolutely.
So on all of the you can speak to yourself and diffuse a situation that you want to do to your own self. You understand? And you can think, maybe it could be a simple thing as thinking about taking a drink, or wanted to smoke something. Not everybody has that ability. I don't think I want to do that, and speak to your own self and diffuse it just like that and stop. There are folks who may have the ability to do it, and there are folks who just can't.
There are lots of amazing possibilities and help to do that.
Yeah.
And if I can say, I just want to look at our agenda, really.
Yes.
It's not. I don't think it's coincidental that our present government theme is transformation, because transformation is a dramatic change in your personal life, in society, in community, and people who are depressed or commit suicide. It's a dramatic change. And Grenada, for example, we had some dramatic change in our history recently, not too recent, and this change has been very extreme, very radical, and it has impacted on the mind of a lot of people, and a lot of people are still lost, and a lot of us. I mean, it did actually affected us in London too, because I remember I was very young, and we went on the street protesting at the American Embassy, marching, even there was older people with us, because the change was so drastic. And what I want to say is that there was a time when Grenada was in splendid isolation, but we are no longer in splendid isolation. We have different culture, different religion, different belief, different lifestyle, different things coming into our society, but our mind is impacted by all of that. Are we prepared to cope with it? How have we prepared our young people to cope with that? And there is also a biblical I am spiritual. I do practice faith, and that's what kept me this far. There is a bigger perspective that said, be not transformed to the things of the world, but be not conformed, to the things of the world. And the world is meaning, the materiality, the body worship, all of this sort of thing. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And in renewing your mind, it's re-educating your mind. And we do need help to do that. So I don't know if you want to say anything on that, but some of the helps we have in Grenada, I think we could do. We have very limited resources, but we have a lot of resources. We have people, we have family, we have communities, we have some empty community centers all over the place, right? We have people who love to talk, but not putting things in place. We have the churches are empty. I think the churches could come in here and do things like community development, social development, family relationship, offering the church on a daily basis, having a rota, people in the community who are retired teachers, retired doctors, retired nurses, retired social workers, have a rota and have the church open every day in the week and have a different program, especially for the young men who are on drugs.
But if I could chime in here, how could we get that really happening?
This could happen by having community talk with the people. Every community has a community center. Everybody in the community have some person that they listen to.
It's not been used. And
it's not been used.
Right.
Let me tell you what we've just done. There's a brilliant young lady here. I don't want to say her name because she didn't give me permission. But I met her years ago from London, and she sees me as a mentor. She drags me to everywhere with her. I've been to USAID, OES, Caribbean with her, and she always introduced me as a mentor. And her, myself, a lady from Canada, from Plain St. Patrick, another man from, you might know him from Conference, who's a farmer. We decided, we're going to do something. So we looked at the Roseville Community Center. We went and we saw it with Dr. Chaitin as well. And we saw what we could do here. We formed an NGO. We approached Mr. Joseph, Mr. Conwell, even the program. And if you can't come up with a program, there's a lot of us here from London and America who return with lots of skills. Use us. We'll show you, we'll teach you, we'll apply our skills, we back here.
You speak of the challenge part of it, because especially with younger people today, getting them to come out to an event like what you were planning on having. How do you think the approach for that will be?
Well, there's always a young man or young woman in the community who know the language. So bring them into the focus to work with you and get them to do the scouting. And in the scouting, let's just come and tell us what's happening to them. Right. And when they tell us what's happening to them, then we can form the program from their perspective.
All right. But I understand what you're saying, because it's a way of getting the young people and getting their mind, off the negative nature of which they are into these days. Yeah. How you feel about that, Sylvan?
What I want to add to this is that I want to support Ms. Francois in the sense that there are a lot of resources out there, but what we find, the resources that we have, they're sporadic, they're scattered all over, and there has to be a sense of leadership of that process, and there has to be a sense of community, there has to be a sense of structured coming together to deliver what could be the solutions. And I think we speak a lot, but in terms of pulling the resources, Grenada has a wealth of knowledge and the thing people speak about, the brain drain, etc. We suffer a bit of it, but I can tell you there's quite a bit that we do have here. The weakness in the system is that there's the lack of leadership of the entire process in terms of how we can structure the resources to make good sense at the grassroots community level. As a social community activist, I find that one of the things we should do, as Ms. Francois mentioned, you identify mentors, you identify role models, and the issues that exist, you identify a mentor or someone who could facilitate that process, someone within the age group or the category. If you know there might be some issues with famine, you do not want to take a really fully intellectual academician person to speak to the farmer. He's going to feel disconnected.
Yes.
And
it would be in the regular language.
Exactly. So you invite farmers or people, and forgive me now, we're not downplaying that farmers are not educated or intellectual people, but it simply means that if you come with a jacket and tie and I'm there with my ragged, rusty clothes, I may feel displaced or insulted in a subtle way. You don't reach me.
Yeah.
So I think at times, even if the intellectual can fathom himself, dress himself, take himself to the level of the farmer and sit there and have those discussions and so forth, you'll be able to reach people.
That's a very interesting point, you know. One, not cutting you, but one thing they taught us in England as a teacher educator, I worked with families a lot and I had to go into a lot of homes. You never dress up. Just as I came here like this, you never dress up. You never go in high heel shoes and makeup and thing. You don't dress down, but you want to be at a level with the people that they can feel I can identify with you. And I remember I had a family from Afghanistan. This child has never, her mother died, her grandfather, she saw him shot, her father, her aunt, and she was just 16 and she's never been to school. And we tried to get her into school. Again, that we're talking about young people, we're talking about crime, we're talking about violence, we're talking about suicide. She was a beautiful young lady, but she's never been to school in her life. And the school they were trying to get her into was a school for children with special needs, with problems. And she would not go there, and she would not go, and she was rebelling. And then my manager said to me, I want you to find this child a school. If you think you can find a school. And I used to visit at home, again, working with a family in the home, going to the homes, working with them, as you said, finding. I used to work with this child at home every day. And one day, she handed me a pencil. And she said to me, you're such a beautiful lady. Your husband will really love you. I don't have a husband. But in the community, you know, they have that sort of thing. And I found a school where there was somebody, was a nun who worked in Afghanistan, who could have identified with this child. And this 16-year-old got a school, and she just blossomed. So as you were saying, finding somebody in a community who can identify with what the young people are doing is very healing. It's remedy.
All right. We drew for a break. Let's take it. We come back and we discuss some more. It's To The Point for today, Monday, the 24th of July. Are we good for a break, folks? We're coming right back. Stay with us.
NIS, our team proudly works to support the evolving needs of Grenadians. We have made some changes to our operations and want to keep you informed. Firstly, we are happy to introduce the new unemployment benefit. This benefit will provide an insured person with 50% of his or her former income in the case of sudden unemployment. To support this benefit and other benefits we offer, it was necessary to increase the contribution rate. The contribution rate will increase gradually each year until it reaches 16% in 2031. As always, the contribution will be split between you and your employer. The pensionable age will also increase from 60 to 65 years. This increase will also be gradually reaching age 65 in 2029. Pensioners will continue to be eligible for a pension from age 60, but will receive a reduced payment. The NIS recognizes that the prices of basic customer goods are increasing globally. Therefore, we are happy to also increase the weekly minimum pension payment by 25%. Finally, we have adjusted our survivors' benefit payment to a percentage of the age pension minimum. Widows, widowers, and dependent parents will receive 100% or $58 weekly, while children will receive 50% or $29 weekly of the deceased's pension. We are here to make the transition to these new changes as clear and simple as possible. If you have any questions on how these changes impact you and your family, please contact our new informational hotline at 440-6647 or visit www.nisgrenada.org. Thank you for allowing us to be your social security provider.
Welcome back to our listeners and viewers, and my apology for my social media audience. I know I didn't show the love to you this morning, especially those of you via our Facebook page. Good morning. I hope all is well via those of you also via YouTube channels. Good morning, and certainly welcome to this edition of To The Point. Ms. Francois and Mr. McIntyre, welcome back. We want to spend a little time in this segment speaking a lot on suicides and violence, suicides in general, and solutions.
Yeah.
Because we hear a lot of talk about it from different sections of society. Everybody talk about it. They say this, they say that, but sometimes you don't hear the key word there: solution. What can really be done to help people who are going through, even individuals who are violent? What could be done to help them not have those kind of thoughts of wanting to hurt another, or even individual wanting to hurt themselves? You understand? Solutions.
I would go right to basic home base, because we all are born into a family, whether single, couple, parent, extended. We all come into a house, whether it's a boat house, a tree house, a wood house, a wall house, and a child come into the world as an empty slate. Okay. Children are like sponge. One thing I've learned when I was in psychology of education is that a child learn more from what you, the adult, and I do than what you say to them. There's a saying, what you're saying is so loud, what you're doing is so loud, I cannot see what you're saying. So I grew up in a home in London. I had a stepfather. I have a father, but he was never there for him. My mother met a beautiful man from Grenada. He was much years younger than her, but he took her on and he took us on, and he parented me and my sister. But I was still a broken child, and there's a lot of broken children in our society. We have so many parents in a home, stability, and children need stability. You have a son, a daughter. You may not love the father, you may not love the wife, the girlfriend, but please don't take it out on the child from a very young age. If you keep telling a child at a very young age, you're stupid, I hate you, I should have killed you at birth, you're just like your father, that's a lot of negative thing. If the child come in and talk to you and said, Mom, blah, 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 you're going to use a swear word, because I was walking the street one day and there was a little boy and he was saying something to his mother right here in London, and the mother's turning, I'm going to box you, and the little boy was behind all forlorn and sad. I just didn't know what to say, because I know if that was in London, I could have said something and the mother could have get arrested for child abuse. So what I'm saying is, as young women and young men, we have an amazing responsibility. Who we lay down with, who we choose, what characteristic, what personality, because this child going to be the characteristic and personality of the person, of the seed that enters into your womb. So if you're in a home now, home base, if you have 5 children and each of them are different father, different mothers, you're dealing with 5 different women in your face, 5 different men in your face. All of them have personality and characteristics. How are you going to nurture each of this as a young parent? So I said home base, and when I mean by home base, I mean positive parenting, and that's where social service could come in, that's where the church could come in, that's where the government could come in. Teach parenting skills in our schools, because our children are starting very, very young. When I say parenting school, I don't mean sex, because they have it anyway. I mean basic skills: how to feed, how to clothe, how to nurse, how, if you don't have money, how to do something to feed that child, how to feed that child's emotional intelligence. Poverty doesn't create crime. Poverty doesn't mean you have to go to drugs. Poverty doesn't mean you have to kill or shoot. It's poverty of mind, spiritual poverty, and mental poverty that causes you to do some of these things.
So I would want to chime in a little bit on that as well. I listened to some of the intellectuals, psychologists, and so forth, who've spoken about some of the root causes of suicides and depression, and some indications of, or ideas as to how you can have solution. But I would really like to support the whole family values and how people are cultured, or how children are brought up, and very often and all the time more with himself than with anybody else. And that moment of time spent are the critical moments. Yes. where could be where the breaking point could really come. And what we lack a lot in our society and our family values is that young people on the whole, they go unnoticed, unattended, and when they veer off into the silent space, they tend to be forgotten. And one of the things that happen more prevalent is the issue of the artificial intelligence and the use of the modern instruments, where parents go to the mode of virtual parenting. And so they can speak to their children by means of the WhatsApp, by means of the telephone, by means of email, etc. And they neglect that person-to-person contact.
Kind of lack of the physical
yes,
contact.
Very much so.
And my final contribution to that is oftentimes people who become silent and reserved, we do not find the mechanism of reassuring them of their importance.
Yes.
It is really critical.
Yeah.
I have criticized parents for criticizing or trying to punish their children for not doing the right things when they themselves did not provide the example.
Exactly.
When you did not teach the child how to do it. If you want the child to learn to cook, don't expect the child to learn to cook. Teach the child to cook.
Exactly.
If you want the child to put the clothes in the closet properly, teach the child how to fold the clothes properly.
Even though it takes multiple tries.
That's correct. And do not criticize the child because the child has not done it properly. Did you teach the child? And so a lot of time our children would run into that aspect of self-mode, myself, isolated, because they're pushed to the point where they cannot feel their self-worth. And it does not only happen with children. It goes to the point of adults where at the workplace and other places, society, where people are not shown that level of appreciation.
Yes.
We need to be able to find that point where there are good workers who make the contribution, the bosses, the supervisor. You need to come to say to them, you have done well. Not at the end of the day, you didn't push enough. We did not make enough. This was not done properly. But you say, you know what? You could have done better. You did some, but
that lack of complimenting on the
that's
first,
correct.
on the
and to be honest, when somebody say to us on our program that we reach them, it feels like I've given you $1 million. Or it feels to me that I receive $1 million, because it means therefore that you having that emotional maturity coming through. You're having that contribution to somebody's own social development, and you're modeling people into becoming what they really should be, the positive influence in society. So a lot of that, in a nutshell, in terms of what I'm saying, is that our whole societal fabric, in terms of not ignoring the issues
has to be
and showing the sense of appreciation, where you can have that intellectual, intangible form of transformation.
Transformation, that's what it's all about.
Physical. And somebody will also say that when you're going through your feelings, you did not mention prayer, you did not mention God.
That is so interesting. I don't want to comment there. There is a spiritual perspective. You cannot. There's something I recognize in Grenada. You're driving down the road in fast speed and you knock a car and you say, "Oh God, help me." Right? You take a knife and you knife somebody and you say, "God, what did I do?" But the problem is, if as a child your parent didn't, if as a child your parent didn't put a spiritual perspective in you, I don't mean going to church and Our Father, Hail Mary. I mean talking to you as a whatever God you worship, because there's different faiths in our country right now, and there's a group of people I really admire. And I'm going to say it's a Muslim because I've worked with them in England, right? Their faith is so strong. Don't mess with them. The children are brought up in their faith. And the children know who they are because it's a faith perspective. If you are Catholic, a Church of England, or Adventist, it's not about the book and it's not about going to church. It's about you as a parent's spirituality. How do you teach this child to know God? How did you teach this child to call unto God when they need help? How did you teach this child to say, I'm a spiritual being? So if you did not teach the child at a very young age to spend some time with you as a parent or whatever, with God, when the child becomes so depressed inside, because we're a spiritual being as well as human, we got a soul, we got a body and mind. When the child cannot find the spirit in his soul to heal, to help, what do? They become desperate. Where I was working, my first job, as an educator, I was working in a home for children. We have homes here, but we do not have the facilities to help the children. In that home, I was a teach educator, ran our education unit. We had education psychologists, we had social worker, we had the police, we had teachers, okay? I was responsible for the education, but I had meeting with education psychologists, teachers, police officers, social worker, and there was one child. She was of Indian and Irish white parentage. She was at a very young age, and I know that happened in our society. At a very young age, her mother used to give her to various men for sexual, pleasures. So the government took this child away from the parent. We do that a lot in England. We're starting to do that here. And this child, there was something about her. She used to take a knife and just cut her wrist because she felt that she was bad and she wanted the bad blood to come out of her. But I noticed something about her. She was very good at art. So I went out and get a lot of art books, and she would sit and draw. She was quiet. She never used to say a word. Very quiet, into herself. But with the education psychologist, the social worker, talking to her, she was able to stay in the home alone. Recently, I went back to England and I met her. She was a mother.
Yeah.
She was a mother with a husband and a child. So we have children here who have this thing that sometimes we have to take them away from the parents because the parents can't cope. But when we take them away, we should have the resources and the right type of people, not people that would abuse them more, not people that would, destroy their confidence more, the self-esteem, but people who love them enough to find something in them to help them to go away from that suicide route. It's all about love and care. And that's what we really need to get back to the basic.
All right. I just said that, we said the initial stages in the solution starts with the family.
Yeah.
Okay.
The family, or the home family. Where does it go from there?
Where does it go from the home family?
After that's the initial stage.
The school.
That's where we start.
The school.
It starts at home.
Yeah.
It's inclusive of the family. Where do we go from there? In terms of we still under the solution. The solution.
The solution. Okay, you have a family that is broken. Okay, a broken family cannot create whole children. Where is the pastor? Where is the social worker? Perhaps where is the
so now it extends.
It extends to the community.
Yes.
Because it takes a community, a village, to make family whole, and family make community happen for village. So we have lots of churches in Grenada. Right? Every Saturday and Sunday, people just go and clap and pray and shout and scream. Use the churches. In the churches, it's massive building. You have kitchen, you have shower, you have everything. Right? You have people there, retired people, social worker, retired doctors, retired nurses. Don't come and dress up to church on a Saturday and sit there and tell me all this thing on a Sunday. But use them.
It's just
use them empty building.
Our conversation might be challenged by saying, it's difficult in this time and era now that we live in to get individuals wanting to come to church or even listen to,
not to go to church and worship.
I mean, but not to worship, but to even get someone to listen to a pastor.
Okay,
you understand, or listen to whoever minister, who minister in the word.
But you don't go and talk to them.
You
don't. I'm not saying you talk to them. You do things with them. A young man come to you and he said, I am having difficulty. Take Dr. Chaiton, for example. We work close with him. Look how we work with young people. You find out, as I said, there is no bad boy. You take some time. You have different group. You have men who are fathers, who are good role model with their children. They can recognize that this boy needs some help. So you have a group where boys need fathers. So you bring them into the right group. Girls need mothers and fathers. You bring them in the right group. You get them to talk about the issues. And when they talk over the bushes, then you can take their issues and create the solution. They might need counseling. They may not be able to read. Okay, we have a reading classes. They maybe have a problem with drugs. How do we win them out of the drugs?
But how can that happen in a Grenadian society?
Easy.
That's my key point here, because I understand totally all what you're saying, and they are good solutions. But you see, in a Grenadian society, we may still see it as being difficult to attract individuals to accept. Acceptance is also a key.
Yeah.
A key point. Accepting the solutions that you offer, especially when it comes to the church and these things. People have a different philosophy about these things.
We got rum shop. All the men gather around the rum shop and from 8 in the morning till the rum shop close.
So it goes back to my initial point of a structure.
Yeah.
You hit it right in terms of where it starts and where should it end. And I think we can look at a stair and we look at the high point. And you look at going up and coming down. Which way should you take it from? Should you start from the top, walking back down that side, or should you take it from the bottom up?
So it's always recommended you start from the bottom and you go up.
So my personal observation is there is that lack of structure that could identify exactly how we address the issue. And so at the first treader, we must identify what exists at that treader and where it leads to.
Yeah.
And how do we address the next treader, and then the other, and then all the way up, and you find the connecting, and where is the leadership process, or who connects and controls,
where it's broken now,
and where it's broken, and who fix it.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the problems that we seem to be identifying. We good on identifying the issues, but collectively, as you mentioned, how are we bringing it together? You move from the home to the school and the churches.
Yeah.
You move to other places of mass gathering.
Yeah.
What is the connecting mechanism that identify how we reach people who are depressed, who are people who could be suicidal, or people who are violent?
Okay.
How do we touch them at all of these levels? And we identify along those stratas what the issues are, and on the other end, what the corrections and what are the recommendations for fixing those. And I think that's where I'm identifying, in my layman's observation, where some of the issues.
Social workers, probation officers, psychological counselors, mediators. These are lay persons, parents who've been through it, people who've been through it, suicidal recovery. One way I think we can do this is that in Grenada, we need a one-stop shop.
Okay.
In that one-stop shop, you have an information officer. That information officer role is to know all the organization in the country or in the district. You are the connector, so you know which all the organizations are. When somebody comes to you, they ring you up, you talk all the time, you do leaflets, okay? You do school talk. This is where we are. We have this one-stop shop. You want a counsel, you want a social worker, you want a district psychologist, ring me. I can put you in touch with that person. It has to be a government initiative, social work, sponsored thing. It cannot be free. And it always has to be delivered with trained people, because suicide is not an easy thing. I don't want to go there, but for fear I upset anybody in London that would listen, but I have witnessed that. Very, very close to me. Very close to me.
The point I want to make to support what she's saying here, in terms of the structure of the social work, I think there's a lot that goes unnoticed in terms of the debriefing process and the counseling process after traumatic situation and condition. I know of people. There was one woman who said to me, she had this very tragic situation, and a counselor, psychologist or otherwise, was recommended.
Yes.
That person called once. They never showed up again. And we hear this story it's a continuation.
And it happens on all levels.
Yes.
And it happens across. And there are a lot of things have we done an inventory as to how many psychologists, how many counselors that are needed per household? And do we have an inventory or diary as to where people are located and how we reach them on a day-to-day basis? And we await for some massive crisis, like a national situation, where we decide to extend ourselves. But the more deep things exist in the families that are not even identified, are not noticed, or left somewhere. So people might be going through those challenges of not having some things to eat, not having a job, may have had certain loss, and they're just there. They might not be speaking. How many persons, whether it's in a church, whether it's in a school, a job, places, where the system caters for finding out how are you doing?
And the best way to pick up these things are in the school. Because if you have I'm not talking about somebody that said, oh, I'm a social worker, or I'm a psychologist. Somebody gonna get their hands dirty with the child,
we really need
the
to see more of
parent.
this, to be honest. We really need to see more of this, where people can reach out. Teachers and psychologists in school. It's not about a child just in the school either, because there are counselors. Congratulations to them. Hats off to the Ministry of Education that provide counselors in almost every school. But where does it go? Sometimes a counselor deals with a child in school, the parent isn't even aware.
And that's
not
a good
getting
point.
the information.
It's parent partnership. That's the way I want to put in.
Counselor.
Parent partnership with the professionals.
Counselors are even seeing the nature of an individual from a young age. You understand? And these individuals grow with those tendencies.
It's too late. it.
Yes. Longer than. But we drew for a break. We should have taken one a while ago. Let's take it and we come back and discuss some more. To our viewers and listeners, if you do have a question or two you may like to ask, feel free to give us a call, 435-2041. We're coming right back after the break. Please stay with us.
More chances to multiply your Playway winnings by adding Multi-X to your regular Playway bets to win up to 5 times more. Imagine winning as much as $1,200 instead of $240 with a $10 Playway bet by simply adding Multi-X. Place your Playway bets from $1 to $10 or in increments on your favorite Playway symbols or numbers. Then add the Multi-X option at the same value to win 2 times, 3 times, 5 times more. Or free plays. With Multi-X, you must bet the same amount wagered on your regular Playway bets for your winnings to be multiplied. Grenadians, value your dreams and win your way as much as 5 times more. With Multi-X added to Playway and watch your money grow. Must be 18 years or older to play. NLA, making your dreams come true.
Traditional Mass, the foundation of our carnival. It's where it all started. So on Saturday, July 29th, over 10 traditional mass bands will showcase our rich and deeply diverse traditional mass. Let's go to Hero Square, Victoria, in St. Mark from 3 p.m. Come see the Short Knee, Maypole, Wild Indians, Mocha Jumbies, and Beko as they parade the streets. Capture the experience, the color, the sights and sounds of what's truly ours. With free admission for the entire family. Log on to www.spicemassgrenada.com for everything carnival. Traditional Mass Festival, Saturday, July 29th, Hero Square, Victoria.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers. It's To The Point here on Classic Radio and the GBN TV. Welcome back, Sylvan and Mrs. Francois. Mrs. Francois, let me read. This is a comment here from a couple of folks via our social media platforms or WhatsApp. Someone is saying, "Good morning, GT, and of course your guest. This is a good idea. I hope it materializes. Where I live, there's about 6 churches. One church can take a day with a different topic, and I know of they have counselors, nurses, and others who would like to help. I too would like to help." I guess that person is talking about where you see individuals in the community coming together and offering their solutions. That certainly is. Thank you so much there, listener. Good morning to you, caller. Please lower your radio or television in the background before you proceed.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much.
Go right ahead.
Good morning to you and your guest. I am glad that Mr. McIntyre is of a police background, and I would like to ask you, sir, how many times you have arrested parents for the actions of the criminal actions of children under 18? And because I have not been following the news and I have not heard that parents are arrested, but I know in the past parents used to warn children to behave because the police would take them. So I am asking you, is that now off the books? And the other thing is, attempted suicide still a crime in Grenada? All right, thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning.
Yeah, that's interesting. She put me a little bit on the spot, but not too difficult.
Some parents.
Yeah. I think generally, I sometimes use a long way of answering some question, which is a bad but a good way sometimes. We are guilty of not making public a lot of the information that we think the public should know, and that information is specific. And sometimes the information comes out, and the name of someone might be called, and the issue relating to the person's arrest or offense may not really be released. And I think it is something that our community relations department can do a bit more. I think when people raise the issue and ask, that's when they would make it known as to the reason why some people. Yes, there have been parents that were arrested for certain types of offenses relating to their children, and some of it has been reported as abuse in some situation, where it was at one time called corrections. A lot of times it is deemed an abuse, but there have been parents who have been abusive to their children and have been arrested. It may not come across as parental abuse, but it would come across as an assault, or it may be causing harm or wounding in that sense. And so maybe from the police point of view, in terms of their public information component, members of the public would be interested in understanding that, and so they can see emanating from those offenses.
And you can know the trend.
And you can know the trend it is connected. Yes, and I think, so it has happened.
Right,
and in terms of suicides, it's still on our books as to suicides or attempted suicides as an offense.
Let's take another caller, please. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, bro, and good morning to your guests. And I like McIntyre from a police background. Your other guest made a statement a little while ago. I was shocked that poverty don't cause crime. Well, from a police perspective, more the poorest areas around the world, you find the most crime taking place. Even in the Beacon in Trinidad, the police can't even go there. Certain part of the Grenada police, they don't want to go there because it's poor areas and people are doing most crime. If you look at the data, in more the poorest areas, they find all the crime taking place. So poverty must have something to do with crime. You cannot move away from that. Some would like to speak about that, but poverty have a lot to do with crime. So, Mr. McIntyre, you should tell your guest that because you are from a police and you know that for a fact. Have a nice day, brother.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Can I come back to that?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
When I say poverty do not cause crime. Poverty is crime is a concept. I don't know if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Poverty is also a concept. You have to take that abstract thing that don't mean anything and you have to get it into your mind and then apply it. When I say poverty do not cause crime, I grew up in a very poor area in Grenada as a child in Riverside, St. Patrick. All right, there was lots of poverty around us, but we did not go and kill and steal. Our parents instill in us, this is not yours, do not take it. If you want something, work for it. And what did we used to do to work for it? Before I went to school, I don't know how I became an educator. Before I go to school, I had to go to the garden and help my uncle plant the corn, feed the cow, clean the sheep, get some food to bring back to my grandmother to cook, get the coals from my uncle for the firewood. So all of that is still in me. You have to work. You don't have to go and steal. Ask Mrs. So-and-so for a bunch of fig, please, so we can have some food. Do not go and take it. That's what I mean by poverty do not cause crime. Your mind, how your mind is engineered to cause crime. One thing that we become very materialistic, okay? I want this, I want that, I want that. As a child, you would go all out to give the child A, B, C, and D. But when the child becomes 16 and the child cannot find work, what would the child do to get A, B, C, and D? The child would steal. The child would go to the easiest thing. Drugs is the most easiest thing. But if you discipline in your children to use their mind to get what they want, it doesn't matter what that want is. You apply the mind, then the mind is a beautiful tool. You don't have to turn it to criminal crime because you're poor. If this mind is educated at a basic level, when I say educated, I mean the parenting in that mind, spiritual perspective, work, help, clean Mrs. So-and-so yard, you're going to get $10. Put that $10 away for when you want something. That's what I mean by poverty do not cause crime.
Let's take another caller. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the host. I'm learning a lot from this program. Thank you for the guests also, of course. I'm listening to this, and I think the guests raised a lot of important points, and I hope the audience is pretty large because there are a lot of learning points here. One thing I want to add, though, a supplement, I should say, is that serious crimes, and suicide are no respecter of person. You have folks who are in quote-unquote great jobs, wealthy, and so on, who may do some very heinous crimes. There are people who are quote-unquote well-off who may commit suicide. So I think the approach has to be multifaceted and no one size fit all. We have to, the host asked a question about solution, and I was so happy when you asked that question, because I think sometimes we focus on the problem and not focusing on brainstorming enough about solutions. One thing I have to say, though, is that you said that's where it starts. Where does the solution start? And you use the phrase, I think, where does it end? And I don't think the solution ever ends. It's a lifelong process. It's why we hope we get in touch with the younger folks when they're at a very young age, so they can be grow properly in the basis stuff in terms of avoiding trying to get to that situation and so on. A groom, I didn't want to use the word groom, but sort of groom in that context. It's important that even as young adults, older adults, elderly folks, we all go through challenges in life, and we all need help, as the Prime Minister pointed out in one of his speeches. The suicide, I think there were 6 suicide cases and alleged suicide cases, and 2 of the alleged suicide cases were from the younger folks, but 4 of them, I think he said, and I hope I'm not misquoting him, were from older folks, like in the 40s or 50s. I think even one person was 60-something years old. So we all need to have a mentor in life, each one of us, whether we are lay people or professionals, even in the medical and psychological professional fields, if my memory serves me correct, even psychiatrists, psychologists to have counseling also, because they can be transparent and so on, and when they interact with their clients. So it's a lifelong process. It's not that you did this, you have to maintain it. It's like having a vehicle. You don't just buy the vehicle, put tires on it, and ready to go. Fine, and don't do any maintenance and so on, because it does not take throughout life. There have to be active effort to maintain that state. And I heard the old people used to say, "What do you get from a bag of coals? Dust." And I think it's very important that as we try to groom the younger folks, that we actually intervene with the parents also, because that's where the child will return back to their house. And children have a love for their parents, and they tend to emulate what they see from their parents. Thank you so much.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much. Interesting, contribution there from that caller.
But I'd like to go to a point you make as a police officer when you say sometimes we're not sending the information out as it should be good. I have a point here on that, and I said to myself, those who have to communicate ideas and information and implement discipline and punishment to young people may find themselves between a rock and a hard place in bridging the gap between the individual needs and the truth. And this is how I see it. It is critical, right, in communication for the communicator, which is a police officer, which is a social worker, which is a doctor, which is a counselor. It is critical, which is the educator, or the poet. It is critical for the communicator to notice the signs of fear in me, in you, right? And how do you control that fear? Because sometimes we are so fearful in communicating that punishment, that discipline, that idea, that we become angry, that we become very legalistic. And this is the law. But it's good to listen to our body. Look at the body again. Listen and trust your guts. And most of all, find the strength to tell the truth when they could avoid unpleasantness by telling a lie or staying silent. Right. And we go back to the staying of silent. And to be honest, there's a lot of lies told in our community.
Let's take our final caller, because we are strapped for time. Just a few more minutes left. Let's take our final caller, and then we come with some closing comments. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Yes, sorry for calling back, but I believe Mr. McIntyre misunderstood my question. My question is parents being arrested for the deeds of children. For example, a 16-year-old boy was arrested for and charged with, manslaughter or whatever. Were the parents arrested? There is a nice ad on GBN, being played on GBN, again, reminding parents that you're responsible for your children. So how is the system helping parents to be responsible for the deeds of their children? No, I wasn't speaking about parents abusing children. I'm saying parents lie down sleeping in bed and the children outside doing deeds, and they are not taking that as their responsibility. So did they ever arrest any parent to make them an example for them to see, for other parents to see that they must take their responsibility as a parent seriously? Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you.
Really, in direct response to this, the law is very specific as to who is an offender. So if a child commits an offense and the child is on his own, the child has to stand the consequences. If the parent is identified as an accomplice or somebody who contributes to the crime, the parents will be arrested. But if there is no real connection with the offense and the parent will not be arrested.
Okay.
And we've not had, so not because the child commits an offense and the child is underage or otherwise, that the parent will be charged for it. No, that would not happen. The law is not designed in that way.
Okay.
Individuals are responsible for the action. And this is why parents and people say to everyone, you are responsible for yourself. Yes. Make a responsible decision. I try to teach you the right thing, the right way. If you commit the offense, you pay the consequences.
Okay.
But if we have positive parenting from child base, we may not reach to that point.
We may not reach to that stage.
So let's get some closing comments.
So finally, I would just like to make a quick follow up on a comment one of the callers made a while ago, the penultimate caller, that said that suicide, depression, etc. is no respecter of persons, and sometimes that goes also into the spiritual realm in terms of whether that can happen to Christians or church-going people as well. And this recent book that was written by a Grenadian in the United States, it said, "Saved but struggling, well but wounded." And in this book, it's one of the books I would want to recommend. It's not definitely it's an ad per se, but it speaks to Christians and other people who are struggling even if they are saved. They seem to be physically well, but they are struggling because the psychological depressions and otherwise, it is not a respecter of person. Even if you are a churchgoer, a Christian, or you are a lawyer, a doctor, a police officer, depressions and the tendency for suicides and crime, it is no respecter of persons.
All right. Any closing comments?
Yeah, that is true. Close with that, because we have to go back to the fact that Grenada is a Christian country. We put ourselves forward as a Christian country. And I don't mean Christianity just going to church. It's a spiritual battle, and it begins with the mind. There's two forces in nature. The forces that want to destroy you, the forces that want to heal you. And when we align ourselves to the force that go to the divine, because we are spiritual, we are divine, our mind begin to function in that divine source, that spiritual source, and we get the spiritual strength to fight this battle, to kill yourself. As you said before, the voice tells you not to. I'm going to close with this. There was a point in my life in London. I left school. I worked as a secretary, I worked as a dental nurse, but I wasn't satisfied. So I was working as a secretary, and my boss said to me, "No, that's not for you. Go back to university, go back to college." I said, "How can I do that?" So I packed in my job, and I went across touring Europe and climbing mountains with a group of mountaineers all over Europe, Switzerland, everywhere. And when I came back home, I was in my mother's house. I had no job, and I said, "Well, I'm gonna ring up this college." I rang the college, and they told me come. When I entered into the college for an interview, I saw a sea of white people, and I said, "Oh God, I do not stand a chance." But I sat down, I put my mind to do the exam that I had to do. I got accepted, and I went back to college for 1 year to do A-levels, and I got into one of the top universities in London. How did that happen? My spiritual mind connects with my needs, and I started to pray and ask God for direction. So we have to apply. We are not just sexual. We're not just material. We don't have to worship the body. We have a spiritual connection, and when that connection is broken, awful things happen to us. So be connected to the spiritual, to God, whichever God, be it a Muslim or Hindu or whatever. The divine, the spiritual help us to cope with a lot of life issues, especially in the 21st century.
To be continued. Next edition. Yes.
I want to thank you both, Ms. Francois. Thank you so much. Very interesting having you this morning, and certainly learned a whole lot. Sylvan, as usual, thank you once again for being here. Our listeners and viewers, those of you who, of course, contributed to today's program. Thank you so much. Join us again for another edition next week when myself and Sylvan, will be back again. Hopefully Miss McIntyre will join us if it's possible. We'd love to have you again. Thank you so much. We went over time a little bit this morning. I hope management don't mind. Anyway, folks, have a great day. Join us again for another edition of To The Point. Goodbye.
Thank you.